Thank you for your interest in the Retained Recruiter show powered by iIntro. Before the show starts, I have a small favour to ask of you. Our goal is to provide you with the most insightful, helpful and practical recruitment knowledge and know-how from the best in the recruitment industry. If you like this channel and enjoy watching our content, hit the subscribe button to get notified as soon as we upload a new episode. Thank you again, and as ever, we're rooting for your success. Now, time for the show.
And my name is Jo. Thank you very much for joining us today, everybody. We've got a very special guest today, haven't we, James?
Indeed, we have. Delighted to welcome back Paul Hickey, Managing Director of Grass Greener Group, a boutique search and recruitment firm in the UK, but has clients all over the world. And in the spirit of full disclosure, I also want to point out that Paul is the co-founder of iIntro. So it's just important that we share that because we're going to be talking a lot about that today. But the topic for today, Jo, do you want to run through what the topic is? And we'll then come back to Paul and give him a chance to introduce himself.
Yes. Well-timed frog in my throat there. So I love the title of this show. So from contingent chaos to retained results. So as Paul is going to eloquently talk us through, Paul's business, Grass Greener Group, went from 100% contingent to 100% retained. So we're going to talk about what happens when a retained business says goodbye to contingency for good. And we're going to talk about some really interesting results, actually. So nothing short of transformational. So fees up by 250%. Cash flow dramatically improved. Fill rate skyrocketed from 20% to 100%. I don't think there's anyone sat here listening to this who's not going to want 100% fill rates. But also we want to talk about the fact that it wasn't all smooth sailing and it didn't happen overnight. So we're going to go behind the scenes with Paul to talk a little bit about the journey that Grass Greener has taken over the last few years. And hopefully Paul is going to share some of his many, many pearls of wisdom with us today as well. Set you up for life.
That is some introduction. And in the interest of disclosure, it's also worth mentioning when you say 100% fill rate, technically, but technically not, in that you don't always place a candidate, but you always get paid because you're in a contract. So of course things go wrong in recruitment, and ultimately sometimes they'll have a change in direction. So they call you up and say, listen, we know you've worked really hard, but we're not going to be taking on a candidate. And please send us your invoice. Not always that way, but ultimately that's what happens.
Well, Paul, listen, delighted to have you here today. And obviously, as we set out there, your journey didn't start yesterday. So why don't you just give us a brief synopsis of how you sort of came into recruitment and what you've done over the past probably 18 years.
Yeah, that's showing my age. But yeah, I started as a 22, 23-year-old, really with no education. I went to sixth form and then went straight into office work. And I went traveling off around the world and decided that I needed to come back and get a career. I knew somebody who worked in recruitment, so I got a job in recruitment. I did 12 months, then left and co-founded Grass Greener Group, our recruitment company. And out of that, I mean, I was like everybody. You think you can do recruitment better than the company that you worked for previously, and you think you can get paid more and life's going to be easier. And to a degree, some of that is true, but ultimately it was a learning curve. We went out and we did contingency recruitment, and then the recession hit sort of 2009, and we were working with a number of both SMEs and large corporate organizations who just paused and stopped almost everything, at which time we had sort of 15 or 20 people in our business. And that was a real shock to the system. No income, or very little income for 3, 6, 9 months. But we managed to keep the business going. And out of that, we realized that there must be a better way than arranging 10 interviews for 10 candidates with 10 companies and only getting paid on one of them. And what you get paid is literally at the discretion of the company, because you've done the work and they've kind of got you over a barrel to a degree. So our fees are 30%. Well, we'll pay you 15%, or we're not going to take the candidate on. So somebody said to me, Paul, that's like going to work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but you're only really getting paid for Friday afternoon. There must be a better way. And Other industries don't work like that. They don't go out and do all of the work for free, hoping that they'll get paid at the end if they get lucky, or if they do enough of the same thing. So that's when we decided that actually we need to look at how other industries work, how the law industry or the accounting industry works, or the construction industry, whatever it may be, and how can we put something in place so that we've got a contract, we've got protection, it's a partnership, and we can do things properly rather than just doing things faster or doing more of the same. And really, we have no experience of what we know as retainers, as a third up front, a third on candidate shortlist, and a third once the candidate accepts the offer. We didn't really know anything about that, but through asking around, we decided that might be a way forward. Of course, the founders of the company perhaps thought it was a good idea. The staff, like a rabbit in headlights. Mm-hmm. How can we, Paul? We're arranging 10 interviews to make one placement, or 5 if you're good. They don't want to pay us when they get to the end of it, and we've delivered the result. How are we going to get them to pay us perhaps even more money up front, in the middle, potentially 2/3 before they've even met with the candidate? And the answer is I don't know, but other people do it, so we just need to figure out how and start doing it ourselves. And that's when we created iIntro, I guess.
Can I ask a question, Paul, or just really for you to make a statement? Because hopefully people are listening in, and if you are listening in and want to make any comments or ask any questions, please do put them in the comments box. But a lot of people are listening to the model that you just explained there, and they're going to be thinking 2 words, and those 2 words are executive search. Now, executive search is often for the higher levels and seen that way. What level of recruitment were you working at then? And later on, you can tell us what level of recruitment you're working at now. So just so people might be thinking this is all executive search, and that's not me. So where were you at?
Initially, we were around we've always done really sort of techno-commercial recruitment. So it was, if you think about a sales team or a technical team, salaries of say 40 to 80,000 would have been our sweet spot. We were always a little bit nervous of anything above that. That was for the Shreks, for the more experienced recruiters. And obviously anything lower didn't really pay, because obviously you're on a percentage, so you're getting paid a proportion of their salary. So yeah, that was our sweet spot. And we always felt like, obviously with a pyramid, there's less roles at the peak of it, and there's more roles further down. So that was our center of the pyramid. That was always our sweet spot. And to a degree, it still is. Executive search, I think what we've helped to do is we've helped to bring the standards that you'd expect from executive search, or what's perceived to be executive search. We've kind of brought it down to salaries that are, I don't know, between 40 and 80,000, because for companies, they're really important roles. If a company, if it's an SME who employs 15, 20 people, and they're recruiting a new sales director who might be on 70 or 80,000, it's a really big decision for that company. They can't afford to get it wrong. So the better your recruitment partner, the more due diligence that takes place, the more likely that you're going to have longevity in terms of that appointment.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe.
I think we're going to get onto that in a bit. We sort of want to dig down into what it was that you put in place in order to be able to, give clients more information to help them to make more informed decisions. You mentioned something earlier on, which was the difficulty, I suppose, in the mindset. So being able to move from contingent to retained, particularly when it comes to the team. So can you just tell us a little bit more about that? So what sort of things, because one of the things that I know we see quite a lot here is that identity of contingent recruiters is very different to the identity of a retained recruiter. And it's not just the difference in the payment model, is it? That's like the last thing you should be thinking about when you transition. It's more about the value that you add to businesses as a recruitment partner. So tell us a little bit about how you help to sort of shift identities or build a new identity for your business team.
Okay. Well, I think it starts with mindset. And recently, last year, somebody said to me, they said, Paul, I've met a lot of recruiters and I've met a lot of contingency recruiters who'd love to do retained, but I've never met a retained recruiter who'd love to do contingency.
Yeah.
So that tells me that actually retained is the proper way to actually conduct great recruitment activity. So starting with a team of contingency recruiters that don't know anything else, you've got to lead from the front, I guess, and you've got to go out and say, well, if I'm going to go out and do it, and then to a degree, I'll make the mistakes and everybody else can follow, because again, a little bit like a rabbit in a headlight, when you give them the stats that we're currently operating on, this is 10, 12 years ago or longer, to actually where we want to be. But I think with anything, Joe, you've got to give people the tools, you've got to give training, you've got to put a process in place. And I mean, we're going back some time. I've always felt like we were ahead of the curve with this kind of thing. And when we invented iIntro, which I don't suppose we had a vision for exactly what we wanted to do, we just wanted to add value to companies. And we realized that in the recession, I always use car analogies, but Bentley and Rolls-Royce still sold as many cars as they always did. So people will pay for value and they'll pay for results as such. So we went to we went to our existing clients and we said, look, what frustrates you with the recruitment process? And let's face it, it's a necessary evil for most people. No one who really wants to go out and have to do recruitment. It's just a headache for most people. So they gave us loads of feedback in that we get CVs, they're never what we expect them to be. That some candidates don't turn up for interview. Recruiters hound us, they try and hold us over a barrel with their fees. So we got all of this information and we put it down and we said, right, okay, how can we alleviate some of these issues? I'll give you an example. Candidates quite often turn up for meetings and they're not what we expected them to be based on their CV. At the time, things like these were starting to become popular, iPads, and people were carrying cameras and video cameras around in their pocket. So I said, well, what if we create some video technology where candidates can put a little video introduction of themselves forward, specifically as part of them being on the shortlist for the attention of the hiring manager, offer some personal information, some information about why they're interested in the company, what the situation is currently, where they can add value, 2 or 3 minutes on camera. So we thought, well, that's a good idea. And everyone's now walking around with internet-enabled devices so they can tap in and see it. So that was an idea. And that could then alleviate people turn up and we're a little bit surprised by not necessarily what we see visually, but who turns up. It's not a true reflection of what we thought they were going to be. So that was a video, for example. Another frustration would be characteristics. We can't really judge somebody's character from looking at a CV. We can judge their experience and their credentials and education to a degree. But actually, people say our business is all about the people, and the reason that relationships are either made or they're broken is because of behaviors. So we partnered with a behavioral assessment company, and we started putting some scientific research behind our candidates and how well they would fit in that particular organization. So I always use the example that a computer programmer is a computer programmer. One might be successful at Apple, sat with a Starbucks on a beanbag, and the other one might be successful at Dell with a briefcase and braces on, using an 80s Gordon Gekko example. But the point being is it's kind of the same job, but in 2 different environments, and it's only going to be right for the same sort of person. So we looked at behavioral assessments and we looked at all kinds of different things, questions and answers, and we started to compile it all together and create a software solution that supported all of this. So the process remained with the recruiter in the middle. Candidates could come into the platform and they could upload videos and complete assessments, questions, answers, profiles, CV, cover letters. And then the hiring team could come into the platform from their side and review, consider, evaluate, benchmark the candidates. And that then, if let's say, for example, a shortlist is made of 5 candidates, then they only have time to perhaps meet 1 or 2 because they're flying them in and out of countries or driving around the country. Then they could perhaps just meet with 2 candidates and it'd be more specific, and they'd be able to spend more time with the people that really matter. So it was always a case of understanding what the client's frustrations were, trying to find ways to alleviate them, and then trying to build a process that you could go and show to prospective clients and say, this is how we do things. So right back to the beginning of your question, Joe, when we developed that and we rolled that out to our team and said, you no longer go and tell companies that you can find really good people for them, like everybody else, but you need to charge some money up front. You can go and show them the value, the features, and the benefits to them, which always revert to time and money. Always. That's why people are in business. So, sorry, James.
No, I was just going to say, I was just going to summarize a couple of those little points for people because, earlier on in the conversation, you talked about how you were trying to bring the perceived value of an executive search model into recruitment. And I think, this might sound like a bit of a grandiose phrase, but what we've done there is democratize executive search and bring it to the mid-level roles and put that in place in that way. So that was the first part of what you said. And then I think the really important message about what you said there in terms of differentiating yourself against your competitors. So rather than me telling you, let me show you. So what you've done is you've productized that intangible service of recruitment and enable people to touch it, feel it almost. Yeah.
Yeah. When I go, I mean, this can be done online, like in this kind of environment, or it can be done face to face. But it's a little bit like a test drive of a car. So once, you go and sit in an office, do you want to buy a car? Not really. But once you've got behind the wheel and you realize how practical it is and how comfortable it is and how fast it is, then you're more interested in buying. And I think that's the same sort of psychological process that would go through a hiring manager's mind. And when I go and sit down with them and I pull out my laptop and I ask them to kind of gather around, or it goes on a big screen or shared on Zoom or whatever, and we talk them through what we do. And afterwards, I always close my laptop down or I switch the screen off. And I say, have you got any questions about what I've shown you and the value that it can add? And they point to my laptop. They point to the screen whenever they're referencing what we do because it's become a product in their mind. And of course, it's always easier to buy a product than a service.
Well, I think it does make it more tangible and it makes it more demonstrable. I think, one of the things that recruiters really struggle with is selling the concept of what they do. It's a conceptual sales process. It's a concept of improvement, isn't it? It's just that we then try and productize it because we want to be able to prove what we do. And I think sometimes that ends up falling on CVs. That's why we sometimes, we major so heavily on candidates' CVs because it's literally the thing that the client can see. So productizing your process is really key. Being able to identify very, very clearly how it adds value to the business is also really key. But also, I think the next thing we're going to come to with you is kind of the opportunities that emerged from this, because it's more than just we send you CVs. This isn't really focused on the front end features of what you do, so much as the results that it helps to drive through organizations, isn't it?
Correct. Clients are interested in two things. They're interested in, from a now perspective, they're interested in saving time. They're busy people. They've not got time to be running around interviewing candidates. They already don't want to do it. So you're on the back foot immediately. Any candidates that you put forward that are not perfect, it's your fault. So they've just not got the time and they've not got the inclination to want to do it. So that's not a great start. So if you can help in the short term to save them time and you can show them, you can demonstrate how you're going to save them time, videos, assessments, questions and answers. We'll do all the heavy lifting and we'll just provide you with two candidates on your iPhone that you can come back and say, yes, I want to see that candidate. So that's a time saver for now. Longevity is the key. That's the most important part. But quite often people can't see past. They can't see past hiring somebody. And I often ask them, I try and have a little bit of fun with my work as well. And I'll say to a hiring manager, I'll say, right, okay, what do you think our respective roles are here in this relationship? And they'll say, well, Paul, it's your job to find us some candidates to hire and it's our job to hire them. And I'll say, are you sure? Is that your final answer? So they'll say yes. And I'll say, well, okay, what if the candidate leaves in 3 months? What if the candidate leaves in 9 months, 2 years? Would we be satisfied that we've done our jobs to the best of our ability and properly? And the answer is probably not. So when you start to look at a relationship between a hiring manager and a recruitment partner, and you start to make your decisions or take your decisions based on what things could look like in 2 years, It completely changes the process. It becomes less transactional. It becomes, let's slow the process down. Let's do it properly, because that 60K hire for said company is really, really important to them. It's not about hiring somebody. That's the wrong motive. It's about hiring somebody who stays long term. The more due diligence you can do at the beginning to try and increase the accuracy of that, the better.
Yeah. And again, I think that's maybe where the process is, as we've got it wrong, you know. So recruiting, hiring fast as possible, then means that you're wasting time further on down the line because they're not performing or they're leaving. You're having to re-recruit, the management issues and things, that the underperformance issues that come with that. And as an industry, not as a recruitment industry, but just out there, I think maybe that has been normalized for businesses to not really think past the hiring of someone and not really think about retention and that kind of stuff. Because I know that's something else that you major on, isn't it? Sort of focusing on having that conversation with clients, not just getting you someone in the business, but getting you someone who can stay and who will perform at a high level. People
don't realize, people are trying to firefight, aren't they? Sally left, we need to recruit somebody else in that position.
Quickly.
So yeah, we're like it's like we're like a fire service out. People only call us when they're on fire.
Yeah.
So if you can get past that, or you can find a company that's starting to think strategically, or if you can help them start to think strategically, you're no longer a recruiter in their mind. You're a consultant. And I've got some views on that. I think recruitment consultant, I think if you just classify yourself as a recruiter, you're probably just an administrator. If you see yourself as a consultant, then you're adding value above and beyond finding them somebody to hire. And we've got, as you both know, but for the audience, there's something called the bad hire calculator, which takes advantage of the 2017 REC study into the true cost of a bad hire. And we've taken that data and we've put it into a calculator that can easily calculate. You can sit with a client and do this, and you can show them exactly what it costs to hire somebody and make a mistake. And it's typically about 3.5 times somebody's salary. So I'm no Carol Vorderman, but if it's 50 grand, that's what, 175? That's the true cost of hiring somebody and getting it wrong. So they leave within the first 12 months. So imagine that. Imagine you're an SME business. You employ, 15 to 30 people. You want to hire a couple of mid-management individuals because you're growing. You hire them and they both leave within the first year. You're talking 300 to 350,000 quid of mistakes from impact on reputation, company cars, you're stuck in a lease, you've paid the salary, you've paid the recruitment fee, you need to pay more recruitment fees to hire somebody else. You've got the training, there's so many things, so many factors. I think there's 8 key factors. But that really, when that study came out, I think that was it was the catalyst for us realizing what a great opportunity we had with our intro. If you can just go and sit down with a client and explain to them the value in treating recruitment like you treat your accountancy company. It's a partnership, there's trust, there's added value. Let's start thinking about recruitment how you think about every other department in your business.
Yeah. That's a very good point, actually. When you take recruitment out of recruitment and you put it into any other industry sector, the way that we recruit transactionally doesn't actually make much sense whatsoever.
No, that would show. With the calculator, 2 of the metrics that you need to enter are if you hired. So what's your new employee retention rate? So most companies will measure their retention rate. But it's unfair to match. You've just recruited Sophie 6 months ago. You can't really measure that against Derek, who's been in the company for 30 years. So really, the only true measurement, if you're talking about recruitment and growth, is the last 12 months. So if you said to anybody, look, you need to hire 10 people in a business, and actually within 12 months, or 12 months from the date of hiring these 10 people, hand on heart, how many people do you think will still be in position? Well, people say 6 or 7, and that's fair. Well, that's a 30 to 40% failure rate. So the question back to that hiring manager is, well, if you believe that's your failure rate, would you consider looking at improving it and having a more in-depth conversation with myself, who's got a track record of improving these things? Because I'm sure that if that happened in your logistics department or your accountancy department or your any department, your manufacturing department, I'm sure you'd want to take a look at efficiency improvement. And the penny drops. Like, I mean, you hear the penny drop, and well, I've never really thought of it like that. I've only ever looked at recruitment transactionally. So let's dig a little bit deeper. I'm not talking about the vacancies. I'm talking about saving the money.
Yeah.
Paul, you know what's really strange there? So you just used two names of people. I can't remember the name of the lady you used, but the name you used was for the gentleman you suggested. His name was Derek. I just somebody called Derek just called me on my phone. One of my contacts.
He's been there 30 years. He wants a job.
Yeah.
But listen, we just flashed.
It was Sophie, and I'm just going to yell that just in case that now jumps out your phone, because that would be.
I don't know. I have got these Sophies in my call, but listen, we just flashed up on screen. It's just gone away there. But www.retainedcall.com. If you want to book some time with us, where we'll discuss with you. Thank you. We'll discuss with you a little bit about not just the story of how Paul delivered that, but how we've helped over 350 firms do exactly the same, taking what is importantly. Yeah, and you might pick up Paul sort of sharing things, talking about his computer and the product and his phone, but it's about the process, it's about the methodology and implementing that into your business. So let's just talk about a couple of the challenges, Paul, that you had in the last few minutes and the successes you've had. But first of all, let's talk about the challenges. Maybe they're with your team in terms of getting them to switch. You sort of touched on it earlier, or maybe it's with your clients in terms of how do you convert a client from, hey, I've worked with you for the last 5 years, Paul, and you've always got me people, to, hey, I want you to work with me a new way.
Okay, so on the latter comment, you go and ask them for help. If I was starting again and I'd just been introduced to this opportunity with iIntro, I would go to my existing clients who are currently I'm working on contingency with, and it depends what your fees are with them. You don't necessarily need to charge more. What you're doing is you're locking them in. You're becoming like pouring liquid cement into something. Once it's in, you can't get it back out. And I think that's the trick, because recruitment's volatile. And remember my initial story about we had so much work with so many companies and it just got paused because of an economic factor, a recession, a COVID, a Brexit, a war, whatever it may be. If you're in a contract with a company and they want to withdraw, they need to pay you out. So for me, you're protecting your business. You are generating predictable income, which allows you to grow. It allows you to bring people in at a steady and predictable rate. It allows you to bring, I would think, better talent into your own business, because you're giving them something different. You've got a genuine USP. So it's and for the staff, James, initially when we lost people who were not on the bus. Either you get on the bus or you get off the bus, and that's good. That's good for them. It's good to fall out with people. It's good for them, and it's good for you if they don't want to. If they're not right for it, it's not their thing. That's cool. Let's find some more people who are.
Yeah.
And I suppose such was the success in our own business that we decided to put it out to the wider recruitment community.
What did it do to your business, Paul, in terms of fee income? We could talk in percentage terms or actuals in terms of where you went from and where you got to, and how long did it take? Because sometimes people are looking for a quick hit, a quick fix. So talk us through that.
If we could bottle that and sell it, it'd be a lot more than what iIntro cost, wouldn't it? I mean, it takes time. I think we can. So looking at what my business did is probably not a fair reflection, because we were inventing it. We were trial and error at the time, but 12 months really is the short answer to go from, this is extreme, but to go from literally all contingency to pretty much all retained was a 12-month process. We were really pushing it. We were really innovative. I wouldn't necessarily recommend if a company is out there listening to this and they think, well, all of our work's contingency, I wouldn't necessarily suggest moving everything to 100% retained. Going back to the other question, what you do is you go to your existing clients and you say, perhaps for no rise in fees, or for a 20% rise in fees, or whatever it may be, you charge currently 20%. We'll do this for 23%. We'll do all of this extra. These are the results that you're going to see based on past performance. Would you be interested? What's your feedback? So that's the first port of call, is going to your existing clients and asking them they can give you some feedback and help, and they'll of course be attracted to it. What was the question?
What was the increase in your fees? What did it do to your fees?
More than doubled the fees. More than doubled the fees. That's not, for me, that's not over, that's not over important, doubling the fees. It's creating the relationships with the companies. That's worth more in the long run than a one-off transactional. I've doubled I used to get paid 8,000, now I've got paid 16,000.
Yeah.
That for me is not over important, but it's very difficult once a hiring team have experienced the process. It's very difficult for them why would they want to go back and say, well, just send me some, you've alleviated loads of my problems. I'm just going to go back and I'm going to pay a recruiter 3% points less. Yeah. And I'm just going to get all that grief again. It doesn't really make sense.
Yeah. I just want to explain to people listening, and obviously, because when you talk about doubling, which is important, Paul, just to point this out, because what this helped you do is move slightly further up the food chain, because this isn't about you charging 15% to a 40 grand role and making 6 grand or 7 or 8 grand, whatever it is, and then charging 30% of a 40 grand role, because people probably wonder. This also did help you graduate up that up the food chain, but still within that, as you said earlier, that 40 to 80k parameter. And I think that's a really important point to get across to people that you've done that. And I think the other thing that comes from that naturally, because of the way that you're now charging clients, is the impact on your cash flow and the importance of that in your business.
Not only that, you asked me a question as well. I remembered the question. It was about the team and how the team came along, those that were on the bus. It took a long time, and it took a lot of like riding a bike, kept falling off. But actually now I'm very proud of what iIntro offers in terms of its training. I mean, the platform's one thing, the tech stack is one thing, but actually the training that is offered is second. So, I mean, it's the best retained training in the world, bar none, and then supported by the technology.
Who does that training, by the way? Who does the training at iIntro?
I don't know, Joe. Have you got any ideas? But this is like, joking aside, this is the point. We've got really experienced people who've been there and done it and made the mistakes, and we're always at the end of the phone to help the iIntro network in the situation.
Or Zoom, we do like to do it with people as well.
But I think that training's so streamlined now that if you're a recruitment business owner and you've got a member of staff and you think, look, they're doing really well, but we need to offer something else to our clients, we want to retain our great staff, it's probably the right thing to at least consider and have a look at. And they can probably within, I mean, what would you say, Joe? 3 months, somebody can go from like almost zero to hero in that sort of time. It's not rocket science, is it? Understanding perhaps some of the things that I've mentioned today about the difference in how you approach it.
Yeah. The two things that we major on in the first couple of weeks of training is positioning yourself and then planning your business development. So planning and positioning, you can't effectively make the shift without either of those two things. The positioning, the mindset shift, the change in identity. What is it that I do? How do I add value? That's one of the biggest things. And we've had a few people recently who've come to iIntro as clients. James, you'll know, almost as like a last chance saloon. They'd really fallen out of love with recruitment. Yeah. And they've finished the training, the training wheels have come off. They're out there now and they're winning business, and they're like loving recruitment again, because, none of us come into recruitment to be average recruiters, do we? We want to be great. We want to be awesome. We want to add value to our clients. So it's giving people the opportunity to do that. And I think you're right, giving people the tools and the techniques and the training and the processes and the visuals and all of that stuff is so, so important. I don't think you can just expect your team to go out and sell a retainer, can you? Because
if all they've ever done is go and talk about a vacancy. I mean, I can't remember the last time I went to I had an appointment with a company that's potentially hiring, whether it's face-to-face or on Teams. And I've actually talked about the vacancy. It's not the first conversation. They can try and talk about the vacancy because perhaps that's their expectation of what I want to know. I'll stop them in the tracks. I'm not particularly interested in your sales director, talk about your sales director vacancy today. We need a bigger discussion about your business, where it's going, where it's been, the mistakes that have been made. And it opens them up. It gets them talking about themselves and the business, which people like to do. And we're listening. And we're listening for all those cues as to what their challenges are, and do we have a process, a tool, or something that can alleviate that pressure for them? And if you listen well, and then you can provide solutions, you're probably going to do business with them if you follow up in the right way. Then you can talk about the vacancy, and then when you talk about the vacancy, it's probably 10% about the vacancy and 90% about the person that they want, not the other way around, which is the trap that people fall into.
Cool.
Yes, absolutely.
Good. Well, listen, we've overrun and outstayed our welcome with you, Paul, on that one. But it's been really fascinating. I found the whole process enlightening, and I hope people listening. I'm going to actually promote this show out to our network, Joe, because I think there's a lot of people listening will really be able to sort of align themselves with Paul and his experience and his story and how that can help them. So, Paul, thank you so much for coming along. I'm sure we'll have you back again in the future. We'll give it a bit of a rest so you can get back to work, of course. But Joe, what have we got coming up on the Retained Recruiter Show?
Oh, loads. So myself and James is doing this thing where he likes to leave the country every couple of weeks. So we're going to have some guests coming
I'm not leaving
in.
the country. I'm not leaving the country.
Oh no, that's true. Actually. I mean, you're going as far away as you can without technically leaving the country. So, we'll forgive you that.
Cool.
But no, every fortnight, we're going to run, we do these Retained Recruiter shows. Now, this is the 82nd show that we've done, which is incredible. All 82 shows are now available on YouTube. So you can always go back. There's so much great content. We talk about all sorts of different things. So yeah, coming up, we're going to talk about, some business growth, some strategies for improving your business, strategies for improving your LinkedIn, strategies for improving your marketing as well. So yeah, lots of shows coming up. But for now, Paul, I'm pretty sure people can come and find you on LinkedIn if they want to come and say hi or ask a couple of questions.
Of course, with pleasure.
Indeed.
That'd be great. And of course, if anyone wants to get in touch with us, ask us any questions, please feel free to get in touch. Hopefully, as if by magic, the banner will appear up at the top there. Or you can just grab myself or James on LinkedIn as well. If you want to ask any questions, be curious, be open-minded. You don't have to come to us with a view you're going to go fully retained in 12 months. Sometimes it's just asking the question, like, how would I even do this for myself?
I mean, I was just thinking then, Joe, when you mentioned there's 82 episodes, and wouldn't it be great if, if someone's listening, a recruitment business owner with some members of staff, and they said, I'd just like you to go and watch. These episodes are typically 30 minutes. Go and watch one a day for the next 82 days.
Yeah.
It'd be about 84 by then. But of course, I think anybody, an old friend of mine, George Winnell, once said to me, he said, if you read on a particular subject for 30 minutes a day, for 3 months, there'd be very few people in the world who knew more about that subject than you. And what a great place to start if you want to become a retained recruiter, watching the Retained Recruiter Show.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we're all a little bit boom or bust in recruitment. I want to either do all of it or I'm not going to do any of it. So you're right, little bits, 20 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day. The aggregation of marginal gains. We've been talking about that this morning, actually, in the beacon. We've been doing 20 minutes a day is better than no minutes a day.
Absolutely. Well, listen, it's been fascinating. Thank you very much for watching us. And Paul, thank you very much for joining us. It's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a
Take
lot.
care, guys.
Yo.